Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Sean Carey of the Evolving Practice Podcast, and I'm with my co host.
Dr. Bill Moss.
Hi, we're so excited to speak with you today and for you to join us. We want to talk about healing culture because it's been getting a little bit crazy, and some things might be over the top, probably are actually way over the top. We want to dig into it a little bit. Like, healing culture is getting weird. Let's talk about it.
I mean, probably healing culture's kind of always been weird, right?
Yeah.
We're just going to talk about the weird aspects of it.
Yeah, the kind of the weirder parts for sure. But it's something to that's important to understand because I know when I was getting into this, for me, like it was something that was a turnoff as I was looking at like some of the different communities that were involved in like energy healing or things like that. I didn't really want to be associated with it because I considered myself a professional and I was a professional, and some of the stuff just seemed so way out there and ungrounded that it wasn't something that I really wanted to study for that reason or even experience.
Yeah, and I think that there was a stigma even with chiropractic years ago around that. Like it's weird, it's quote unscientific. People used to use all those different labels to, describe and put healing in a box. But I know for the spiritual work, the only reason I've said this on this show before, but I'm going to emphasize it this time. The only reason I did it was because it was with you and I knew you and I trusted you. And the optics, I think the optics are really big in healing work, right? Where it's like the person who was offering me this and you didn't over dramatize what was going to happen. You didn't over dramatize the actual session and have like lots of sounds and big movements and and you see that sometimes and it messes with people. They feel like they need to fit in a certain way, and that held me from probably anything that resembled new age my whole life, because
Yeah.
I just like the optics of a lot of it was just kind of like, do I have to change who I am and take my identity and now conform into this identity? And I wasn't really trying to do that because it wasn't one that I felt like I wanted to stand with
Right.
at the
Right.
moment. And obviously that's not true, but that's kind of the culture we live in, especially from if you tell somebody you do meditation or you do energetic healing work, they often at times have this picture of like, you know, the drama that comes with
Yeah.
that type of healing.
Yeah. I think that's one of the major problems in the healing world, especially with energy healing, is the addiction to drama.
Mm.
But we can even see this with chiropractic. It's like there's so many TikTok videos and stuff where they have everybody mic'd up, and it's the addiction to drama with that, the popping and cracking, and
Yeah.
it, it's for the vast majority of people, it's just not that dramatic when we do adjustments,
Yeah,
which is good, and it's not that dramatic when you do energy healings either.
I saw one this week and it was an upper cervical guy or an upper cervical S guy, and he did a toggle and he like posted the video of himself doing a toggle on somebody in like every group everywhere. And the like tissue pull and stance and approach, if you want to call it approach to the adjustment, was so dramatic. And then like his necklace is like hanging out, so he fixes it, resets up, and then he like does it and he like turns away from the person, and it was just so dramatic. And
Yeah,
I'm like, none of that's necessary. Like you can be an artist without being like a showman.
totally. Yeah, you'll
And
probably do a better job when you're
yeah,
not worried
so
about
and
being.
people comment. I read, so,
Yeah,
every so often you just have to like just watch what's going on, and I just wanted to see like what people were saying. And in some groups, nobody said like anything. On the public page, it was like people were like, "Bro, that's so over the top. I don't think you need like all the flair, if you will,
yeah,
to make it
yeah,
happen." And you don't. And I personally don't love posting videos because I think the context can be interpreted however you want. If you like recorded our energy healings too, you just
yeah,
like there's a time and a place, and it's not necessary. There might be a surgery like shown as an educational video, and I'm not saying we're the
yeah,
same as surgeons, but I'm saying like there is a decorum that goes into sharing what we do, and it just doesn't
Right.
feel like the appropriate place, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And there's this attachment, I think, as far as the aesthetic of healing. So
Hmm.
it's the aesthetic is so important in some of these spiritual communities,
Yeah.
especially with energy healing. And it's some like the more like kind of dramatic or like visually over the top, the
Yeah.
better. You know, or
Yeah.
the more like guru status that person has, the more sacred geometry tattoos and all those things.
It's true.
And
That's yeah, it's very true.
yeah, and it really is like it doesn't have to be that way at all. Uh, being like a healer does not mean you have to be ungrounded at
Mm,
all. So that's one of the things. It's like people will, I think, dramatize like this degree of ungroundedness oftentimes,
yeah.
where they're kind of living in their own reality, and it's like, well, we got to connect with everybody else too.
Yeah.
So we don't want to go out there where nobody else is.
Yeah.
And there's
And
a way
it's
people can do it by just being too dramatic.
in fact, I almost feel like part of my superpower early on with offering some of the energy healing work and doing the guide work is the fact that it's just I don't wear myself or carry myself at all in that vein, and neither do you. It's
Right,
like we can go much deeper with people and still be and yet be very grounded and have a full understanding of the professional nature of what we do, the individual true healing that's come from knowing thyself gets expressed. So the authentic self comes through because every healer should look kind of different, right?
right.
If they're truly expressing who they truly are, it shouldn't necessarily look like a bunch of similar people. And, your office space is an expression of you, and mine
Right.
is an expression of me. And the work that I do and how I carry myself in the healing work, it's different, and yet we both have a professional standard. And if you're truly expressing yourself as a divine being, you tend to want to hold yourself in this higher beauty, higher essence of royalty. And I think a lot of this world or the aesthetics kind of lack that royalty, lack that standard of professionalism across the board, including chiropractic. It never made sense to me to like adjust barefoot. It
Yeah.
wasn't my style, and I'm not saying people can't do it and be successful and happy, but I don't practice at the beach, so it wouldn't fit.
Yeah. Yeah, my decorum pretty much for when I do energy healing and when I do chiropractic is very much like this. It's just
Mm,
that professional. Like this is literally what I wore to the office today.
yeah,
I'll wear something similar to do energy sessions tomorrow. But yeah, it doesn't have to be over the top.
yeah,
And I think when people do that, they turn a lot of people off.
I do too. It doesn't feel safe or comfortable. It feels like,
Right.
it
Yeah.
doesn't,
Yeah.
even it's like when somebody's so different and outlandish, like it takes more to get to know them. And instead of being like, oh, I'm just like them, it's like, well, I'm not really
Yeah.
like this person.
Yep.
And we do want to feel connection to the people that we work with. And in fact, there's a very special connection in a lot of the work that we do with people. And they tend to have some similarities in the self when they work with us. We often
Right.
notice that. And I get that. It's like you want to also be your own self too. And a lot of people find that expression however it is. But I just think it can be a little bit over the top. And on the other end, it's like you don't see as many healers that are just kind of being, I don't want to say normal, but kind of you kind of stick
Yeah.
out in that world when you're just kind of normal. And even chiropractors for many years, right? I don't feel like I get this as much anymore, but they used to just hear these stories of how people would behave when clients came in, and it was just like just too much, right? It was just too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. Yeah. There is. I think that this ideal that the ideal I have is really more about being a professional.
Yeah.
As far as like with the association like a healer, both as a chiropractor and then when I do the spiritual guide work, it's really having a high level of
Mhm.
professionalism
Yeah.
and attention to detail and providing people the best care possible.
Yeah.
You still have to take care of all the other pieces, and I think one of the ironies with that is that being able to have that as the focus allows us to really be very deep with the work and with the connection. Like
Mhm.
we're not getting distracted by this drama, so we can like really zero in on the energy piece of it,
Yeah.
or the chiropractic piece of it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it gets the ego out of the way, where in a
Yeah,
lot of the healing work, like, the ego is being, like, put on a pedestal and pedestal and brought in, and that's difficult. I mean, I think that makes it challenging, and the ego's gotten so big, you have these everybody's doing these big events
yeah.
around um, in many different capacities. And one of the biggest things that's getting really popular in the healing community, and I don't know how you see this there, I don't see it a lot in Pennsylvania, but is like the retreats for the psychedelics and the microdosing and this constant kind of, which I would refer to it as is escapism.
Yeah.
If we need that level to access a higher level of consciousness, and we can't access it without it, it can create, and it tends to create problems for people. Not everyone's going to say it creates problems, and many would argue with us that no, it's very helpful, and it's how I connect with God and experience a higher potential. Luckily, where I am, I don't actually run into a ton of this. I don't know if you're experiencing it more with your clients and in your area, um, but it is becoming all over the internet, right?
All over the internet, all over the world, really. I think that this
Yeah.
is one of the major it's a major challenge in terms of spiritual progression because it
Mhm.
can be such a distraction.
Mhm.
And, like, I have the same, like, thought process with you with it. Like, I don't think that we need this, um you don't need to do, like, 100 ayahuasca ceremonies, in South America to get to know yourself. And
Yeah.
and in many ways, like, you'll open up, doors that you don't wanna open up. You'll create these different illusions of the self that are gonna
Mhm.
be really difficult to unwind.
Yeah.
Uh, and I say this as somebody who, my brother was essentially schizophrenic after, doing a psychedelic trip.
Mm.
And this is before any of the energy healing. Like, this was, when I was in college that this happened. But it was this energy healing work brought him out of it maybe 10 years later
Okay.
or more. But
Wow.
people can get really damaged from this approach where just super dramatic, not having discernment about really about what they're doing, and just having this idea that ayahuasca is going to solve their problems, or weed, or or the
Mhm.
microdosing, or those things. They do have a very real energetic impact, but it's not always positive.
Yeah. Yeah, it
And
kind of feels like steroids to me, in many
yeah,
ways. It's like you can use them to get a lot stronger, and you're going to know you're stronger. You're going to feel stronger. You're going to be able to work out like you haven't before, and you're going to have this experience that is amplified, right? But that amplification also has many, many consequences to it, and
yeah,
I know it helps people. Like, that's not. It does help people to some degree, like, feel this higher level of connection. I'm not arguing that. But when you need that element or that thing outside the self to access it on a regular basis, it's like, well, what are you that's kind of how addictions end up forming to some degree,
yeah,
right? I'm going to rely on this crutch of this thing so I can get there, instead of you recognizing that maybe you're the tool, and maybe you have the ability to access it, and you don't have to always do this. And I had an experience with, I didn't do psychedelics. In fact, I tried a couple of times and they didn't work. Like, they
interesting.
were duds. And I always felt, looking back, like I was pretty protected. But I did have multiple acquaintances that, I saw part of them go away and not
Yeah,
return. And I
yeah,
saw that with LSD from a friend in high school. She ended up temporary schizophrenic and was hospitalized for multiple days. And part of her never came back.
yeah.
We kind of joked, whenever she drank a beer, she was tripping from that point on. Like, it was
Wow.
just, she was not fully there. And I saw that happen to a couple people with mushrooms.
Yeah.
My school was like very into the psychedelic music scene. I was
Oh,
too.
yeah.
I've been to so many Fish shows, but that culture of, like, the drugs, I just never really wanted to bridge that gap, but I saw so many people do it too often, kind of seeking that enlightened
Yeah.
experience and transcendental experience, and only to, be show up less than themselves afterwards. So, I see all these people that need to do this to access it. And I don't think it's a great model, because it also tells younger people, like, you can't
Yeah.
access the level of God without doing these substances that are like very controversial. So you might as well what? Give up, not try, not seek a different way to do it. So I think it's loaded with drama and misunderstanding.
Yeah. And massive risk, I think.
Massive risk.
Like, and this risk that is really unnecessary. And I also did different experimentation with psychedelics when I was young, and it was, well, I mean, when I was like 20 years old. I'm still
Yeah.
somewhat young now.
Yeah. Half your life ago.
Right. But and I was wanting to do it from this place of spiritual exploration, and it was
Yeah.
like I got a little bit of that, but it wasn't clean. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't clean energetically. It wasn't clean on a spiritual level. And now, like, looking back at those moments, it's like, what I can experience on just a guided meditation, or like a meditation session, or doing astral travel or something like that. Some of the basic stuff that we teach, it just goes way beyond any experience I ever had with psychedelics.
Mhm.
And it's just like, and it's a pure experience with the soul and spirit. Like, you don't need anything on the outside. You can get that deeper connection with the intuition
Mhm.
in a way that's like safe. That safe that will reveal more of your divine nature. Like, we don't have to rely on something outside of ourselves to achieve those more divine states and awarenesses.
Yeah, because when we experience it with a higher level of consciousness within the self and in the physical realm, and you can kind of do it. I don't know if I'm going to accurately display, but you're kind of experiencing and witnessing the self and its higher development and growth within the
Yeah.
moment, which is like the point, right? And I tell people this all the time, is like, even as a guide who does healing work, I'm like, you could very easily use me as a tool to escape your life too. And that's
Mm.
actually what I never want to do. And I was
Yeah.
like, the point of this isn't to you, it's not to meditate to go out there to forget your problems. It's not to receive a healing so you don't have to live in reality and do anything about it. It's
Right.
more about, understanding the self so you can more fully bring it into the realm of now, so you can do something very different with it, so you can live into your life. I love saying that to people, is like, this work is about living into your life. It's not about
Yeah.
exiting out and being like, well, it's tough, so I'm going to go out here to find out what it's all about and escape the self, so therefore I can avoid it and really make progress. And it's like, it just doesn't work. And I see many spiritual practices, and I think this luxury world of like going away, being on a
Yeah.
retreat, sometimes it gets, because I've done this, I've done every kind of like, well, I didn't do the with psychedelics, but I've tried to like go to these rah-rahs and get hyped up
Huh.
and get out of my own reality, and then coming back to it oftentimes feels really hard, because it was such a experience that wasn't able to fully integrate into this world. And the point is
Yeah.
to be able to integrate and utilize in the present and in the moment in your life, so you can really make a difference. Like, that's what healing should be all about.
Yeah, I fully agree. And the way I would say it is that uh, a good healing community or group should basically be more connected to reality.
Mm,
Like, as we heal, we should be more connected with the reality around us. We'll have a greater sense about that reality. It's because as you have more awareness and more wisdom, there's more pieces of the puzzle that you can kind of assimilate and integrate. But that person should be more integrated. They should be more connected to physicality, not less.
I
And
love that.
yeah, you can really see it, like, where when people are getting less connected from physical reality, no matter how spiritual they're, how many
Mm,
crystals they're wearing, or
yeah,
drugs they have, it's like that person's not more spiritual in a way that you really want to be, if they're
yeah.
disconnecting from physical reality like that.
Yeah, it feels, it can borderline become like OCD. I like need all these external
Yeah.
tools to like be able to operate in this world. And I think many times people want to, the what they would outwardly say is like, I want to be and feel and experience more connection to God
Right.
um and to spirit, and yet also live in this physical life. But then we get this distorted, um I'm outside, I'm inside, I'm outside,
Yep.
instead of kind of living in both in the
Yep.
moment. And that for me was the very big difference. And I believe this work, from what I've experienced in healing work, it's just the work we do bridges that gap best. It helps you live kind of in the in between of
Right.
understanding what it means to be fully physical and fully spiritual. Um, and that's not the easiest thing. And I think one of the, kind of
Yeah.
leading into another aspect of this is, it drives me nuts when communities are like good vibes only, because when you're
Yeah.
learning and growing, uh, it's not just about good vibes, and it's not attainable, because you're going to avoid a lot of life if you're just trying to experience good vibes all the time too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Like sometimes we need to, face the shadow
Hmm.
within ourselves, and you also need to be aware of what's negative that's not within you, too.
Yeah.
And just pretend everything's good vibes. It's a really naive and immature place to come from. So, it's that you can't. You want to have like faith in you want to have faith and hope and this inner knowing that everything will work out for the
Yeah.
best, and surrender and align with the will of God, and also have a plan to make that happen too.
It's
Like
great.
those two things really need to be synchronized.
Hmm.
And just this idea of just good vibes only, like I'm just gonna think a couple thoughts and then I'm good.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
And it kind of robs the opportunity to have that overcoming, like you said, is like, at first you have faith that it will get better and I can be a part of that getting better,
Yeah.
working with God to make it better. And then it happens, and then you start to know that you can do it, right? So you
Yeah.
like overcame this thing. And we always talk about the mysteries kind of moving from faith to knowingness. And
Right.
if you just, I don't want to say you become ignorant and allow it to just take the immature route of like, well, no, I'm just going to have good vibes, instead of, again, recognizing reality and experiencing the challenge and then overcoming it and being like, no, I know I can do this. And that's the thing about, I think I'm speaking to some of my initiates and people I work with, on the healing path, is like that's what the path prepares you for. Is like, the point isn't to not be stronger. The point isn't to be like, oh, this made my life tough. It's like, no, it didn't make your life anything besides what it was. You just
Right.
actually, you can see it. And when you can see it, that reality of being like, well, that is what's going on here. You have to kind of take action through it. So
Yeah.
those good vibes don't necessarily feel great, but on the outcome of the other side, and this is true of all healing, is this more, it's like a win that stays with you, right? Like
Yeah.
wisdom and
Yeah.
experience, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that was so challenging, but look what I did.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's like having the good vibes only. It's just a very immature perspective, and
Hmm.
like you wouldn't have a little kid like running into the street and be like good vibes only. You would run out there and grab the kid before they go into the street, and that is the approach that is necessary with a lot of this. Like we don't want to abdicate our own responsibility. We are divine beings. Like the divine is within us. It's a part of us. It's not separate from us. So we don't want to like abdicate our responsibility, which I think a lot of the good vibes only type thing comes from too. It's kind of like the God and the angels, or maybe if you're going further out in terms of healing communities, the different galactic beings, and
Yeah.
whoever is just going to solve all the problems of humanity for us. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, well, what about us? We're here for a reason. We're part of this equation.
Yeah. Yeah, like we're just existing down here, and like
Yeah.
it was supposed to be a beach, and we were supposed to be just on the vacation while everybody else handled the situation. And I think that kind of lacks responsibility for our own part in creating a better world,
Yeah.
because you know we we built a lot of things, and we've also done a lot of good, and we've also done a lot of harm. But at the end of it, we're all part of that, and we're important to it, you know? So
Yes.
I think it's an empowering aspect to realize that you can create better vibes. Right? Right?
Yeah.
Like create better vibes. If they're not good at the time, well, you don't just change and ignore. You like create a better situation. It's time to like buckle up and make it better and make it new. And I'm probably saying that to myself, because there's always ways in which we want to do that. Each and every one of
Yeah.
us every day has like an looking at our life. And I used to think I was crazy, like I was gonna arrive someday, you know, and
Right.
oh, it'll finally be the way I want it to. But like when you realize like you're always
Yeah.
going to be doing that, um, that's what progression is: continuously making things better, kaizen, if you will,
Yes.
continuously never ending improvement. It's, you know, it can be exhausting when, if you think about like that's what life's going to be like, but it's also very rewarding, and you can make it better instead of just ignoring and treating it as if it were good.
Absolutely love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that brings us to kind of the last thing, is like the reality of healing work is we talked about the messy middle in like our last video, but healing, true healing still looks like grief and mess and integration and
Yeah.
discomfort and growth, embodiment. All of these things are actually the elements that really go into what healing truly is.
Yeah, and not in a dramatic way. You know,
Yeah.
it's like that when we do this healing work, one of the first things that will happen is increased awareness.
Mm.
So it's like you might be like, "Oh, everything's fine, everything's peachy," and it's like, "Oh, I didn't," there was that thing that was staring me right in the face, but I was just choosing not to look at it.
Mhm.
And the increased awareness, though, that light helps you to see what's not working, what's not of the light in your life, what's not creating the heaven on earth for you.
Mm.
So you see that, and then you're given that choice. Okay, like what do you do about it? And
Mm.
that's where all the power comes from on a personal level. And it's like, okay, so oftentimes that will mean a sacrifice. Maybe we have to let go of an old way of being or thinking or operating. And part of going up to that next higher level is basically letting go of what's keeping you stuck at the current level, so that you can then rise higher, and go to that higher frequency. And if you're not like facing and releasing what's negative, that's there's a huge problem there.
Mhm.
And I also like don't consider it that all like shadow work is something that's interesting. I think sometimes people can identify shadows as something that or that they're trying to integrate as something that's not actually them. I
Mm.
think that's also a huge problem. Like there are things that are external to us,
Mhm.
different thought patterns and those things. That's like you don't have to like lovingly hold those in your heart. You can also release stuff. You know,
Yeah.
you can just like let go. Like tomorrow's trash day at my house. Like we're gonna have the garbage by the curb for the trash truck.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be like, oh, just stay with me in this loving space. That's not shadow work.
Yeah.
Shadow work is like you see it and then you address it appropriately. So you need good discernment to know, okay, what do I need to loving embrace? What is actually my true self that just needs to be nurtured, and what isn't me? It's some type of external thing that it's time to let go of.
It's really good. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, again, I think that's another thing, that like the shadow work and the darkness aspect of the self
Yeah,
gets like so amplified in some of the other kind of wellness and retreats and things, and like, oh, I'm
yeah,
doing all this shadow work, but it's kind of like you're describing. Sometimes it's actually just as easy as like putting it down and just moving away from it, you know. It's
yeah,
like not stocking your fridge with food that's shit, you know. Like you're just like, well, I'm not going to do it. The way
yeah,
around this is to just like not do it anymore, to just let it go and to get rid of it. Because but a lot of times all the attachments around, you know, why it's still there
yeah,
are the anchors that kind of keep it
yeah,
there. But if you just in the first place didn't put it there, it's going to be a lot easier. And I think maybe you would say that I think that's one of the hardest things as a person who's a guide on this path, is we oftentimes can see some of that a little bit more readily in others along the way, because we have put down a lot over time. We
Yeah.
have put down a
Yeah.
lot of things that have really stood in the way. And sometimes we're like, oh yeah, that stood in my way too, and I
Right.
wanted to hang on to that aspect. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, if you just put that down, you wouldn't even know, because people put a lot of, in our world, attachments around nutrition and food,
Yeah.
and like not changing, and it has to be, my problem has to be coming from this angle, and I understand it all, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, oh no, I thought all my problems were just physical too.
Right, 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 right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also kind of denying reality. Or not
Yeah.
kind of, like, if you're somebody's in that approach, like, you're really denying a huge aspect of reality, which is, basic physics at this point, understanding that there's a quantum field, there's understanding that there's energy all around us and those things.
Yeah.
So it's not, it doesn't make somebody more, like, scientific or logical anymore, to just, not be aware of those other pieces.
Yeah. Oh, it's hard, but um yeah, the culture is weird, but on the positive side of it,
Yeah,
there is a lot more, um I think, options for people to look, because I think the desire has gotten much greater to understand how we are more spiritual. Let's say we'll
yeah,
we'll start there at the very basic. I think there is a very, and even like holistic health, there is a bigger movement over the years to look for things that are more natural, look for procedures and treatments and food sources that are more like gentle and mindful, if you will. I mean, I know that word gets bent all over Kingdom Come, but that's true. People are looking for, how can I be more one, right?
right,
With
right.
myself and with the community and the universe, if you will. And because of that, there is an exposure to the greater connectedness of healing work. And so there is this awareness that's opened up. And I think it's important for people to know that even within the drama, there's a lot of good work being done out there.
Yeah,
And oftentimes it's the people that don't really want to get clicks and don't want to create a gigantic following. I mean, we do this podcast, and I said to my wife, it's like, it's the only type of content I really enjoy doing,
mm,
because it's a long form expression, and it gives
right,
us an opportunity to explore over
yeah,
and over a long period of time. And I'm not interested in just a 30-second video to get your attention to convince you that you
right,
should do this thing, right?
yeah.
So in the
With
the
lots of sage and Palo Santo and, dramatic hand movements and drums.
so much. I mean, I do have some incense back here, and there
Yeah,
might be some sage, but there's also a lot of business books. I'd say half, at least, most. This is like all my business books, so
yeah.
it almost doesn't look like the incense completely fits.
It is a bit ironic that I say that because in the video I have, my one of my shamanic drums right behind me.
Look, I have like a sacred geometry tattoo.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
so funny.
That is funny. Yeah, and it's like we do have those aspects. It's just, these things don't need to be so, dramatic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's so fun. But I mean, there's a lot of fun things out there to explore, and people are picking up on, and they're looking, how do I get an experience with this? Because that's it.
yeah,
It's like, you can read a ton of books and that sort of thing, but people are also interested in living life, and the reality is, how can this work, and how can I have tools to go deeper? And people are
yeah,
looking for that. So if that's you, I mean, I would highly recommend start following us on Instagram, the Evolving Practice Podcast, or is it just the Evolving Practice Pod? I forget.
I think it's the Evolving Practice Pod on
But
Instagram.
you'll find it.
Yeah,
And we do different workshops and events in our areas. I'm in Pennsylvania. Sean's in Upper Massachusetts, north of Boston, and we have people all around that are doing different healing work, chiropractic work, healing work, whatever it may be. If you're interested in from afar, we'd always be happy to connect, even on a phone call, to just
yeah,
help direct people to the right fits. Because one of the things we've been blessed in over the years is to have connections with people, and God only knows how many countries at this point.
Yeah.
But our reach has gotten greater, and we'll continue to bring some of those guests on here so you can get to know them if they're in more of your local area.
Yeah. And another resource that's available for anybody who enjoyed this specific episode is that two of my favorite teachers who do a really good job as far as they're incredibly advanced spiritually and
Mm,
brilliant and great communicators. One is sovereign Miss Dave Lanyon. So he's the Dave Lanyon on Instagram, and he's
mhm.
also on YouTube as Dave Lanyon. He has all sorts of different videos on there that are
Great.
really great. He's really good at expressing spirituality in a
And
practical way.
I was going to say that. So
Yeah.
practical.
And then another person who's so gifted at this expression as well is Dr. Teresa Bullard, who's also an Ipsissima now, which is basically one of the highest level initiates in the world. She has this show, Mystery Teachings, on Gaia TV, which is just absolutely amazing because there's so many good visuals and so much good audio, where she really breaks some of these different things down. Talks a
Mm,
lot about ancient history, but she does it with somebody who is truly a physicist. Like, she's a doctor of physics, so she
mhm.
has that strong logical brain, and she's able to really weave the left and right brain together for people.
So good. Yeah, definitely check out those resources. And it's amazing how many people have found me through those resources. So,
Yeah.
in the very same light, tap into those and you'll find some great wisdom that's very accessible, very high level understanding to go deeper in these concepts. So, thank you for joining us and going deeper with us. And we are excited to almost hit. I think this is almost it. The year,
I think this is 51.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. I think the next one is going to be our basically year anniversary.
So thank you for being a part of the year. We've had a great year, and this one's going to even be better because we
Yeah.
don't stop continuing to improve. And part of that is we want to do that with the show. So thanks again for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you, connecting with you, and getting you connected with the resources that help us grow.
Thank you all so much.